As they move up, good evening. My name is Dave Perry. I'm the president and CEO of the Oro Valley Chamber of Commerce. 11 and a half years now. My wife Lisa and I are proud to call Oro Valley home for going on 15 years. It's great to have you all here. Participation in the process of selecting people to represent us in government is at the core of democracy, which is in and of itself a very messy business. I like the Winston Churchill quote. He said, "No one pretends that democracy is perfect or all wise." Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms of government that have been tried from time to time. And I think Winston Churchill was pretty doggone right about that. I noticed that there's a flag to my right, so please rise if you would and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In the interest of disclosure, our chamber has a $40,000 operating agreement with the town of Oro Valley for services rendered on its behalf. We work hard for the people's money and we're proud to do so. Within that agreement, our chamber agrees to refrain from endorsing candidates for mayor and council, and we very much adhere to that pledge. Ours is a transparent organization. Our events director, Kristen Sharp, is the daughter-in-law of mayoral candidate Danny Sharp. Kristen just marked her 3rd anniversary at the chamber. She does terrific work for us. I might not have been able to predict 3 years ago that we would find ourselves in this somewhat unusual circumstance tonight. Kristen was here earlier. She has left for the evening, and I'll tell you that she does not have a campaign sign on her front yard. You know, I know all these people, I respect them, and I'm on good terms with all of them. My intention is to be on good terms with all of them tomorrow as well. Our mission here is to shed light and talk about the issues that face our terrific community. My highest purpose is to present you, our guests, a fair, respectful, informative conversation about the community. I hope you'll join me in that pursuit. I want to thank the Oro Valley Church of the Nazarene for allowing us to rent this fine space this evening. We've got technical help from their crew back here. This is a wonderful place to have any kind of an event like this. I also want to thank our timekeepers, Susan Swan of Swan Pilates and Lila Chapman of Sierra Tucson. They're both members of our Chamber Board of Directors. They're both citizens of Oro Valley. They have the hardest job, by the way, which is holding up the signs that say 30 seconds and time's up. I also want to thank our Chamber's Board of Directors and my staff. And most of all, I want to thank these candidates, people who are willing to put themselves into the tumult. And for that, I would ask that you acknowledge their efforts with your applause, please. This event is being live streamed and recorded. We're going to post the recording on our website, orovalleychamber.com, and it'll be free for anybody to take a look at. A few minutes ago, we held a drawing to determine the order of opening and closing remarks. Each council candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, then 1 minute for a closing statement in that identical order. I will ask the questions tonight. Each candidate will be the first to answer at least one question. Each candidate will get 1 minute to answer each question. There will be broad subjects upon which multiple questions and answers are anticipated. Our order tonight is Charlie Hurt, Melanie Barrett, Joyce Jones-Ivy, Bill Rodman, Josh Nicholson, and Joe Urseg. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll welcome those candidates, and Charlie will begin with your opening remarks. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dave Perry and the Chamber for organizing this forum. My name is Charlie Hurt, and I am a 16-year resident of Oro Valley. I'm a retired professor and dean at the University of Arizona and other institutions. I have served as a member and chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission and as a member and chair of the Water Utility Commission. I am running for town council because Oro Valley is a special place, one that was built on public safety, smart decision-making, and the promise of being a community of excellence. I am a numbers guy, and I am running for Oro Valley Town Council to help make sure the numbers point us back in the right direction and continue to do so. I will focus on 3 items of top importance to me. First, wisely managed growth. We need to manage change, and we need to manage it wisely. I will use my skills with complex budgets and knowledge of forecasting techniques to project Oro Valley's growth, not just for 2 to 5 years, but far into the future. Second, there is a critical need for transparent leadership. Decisions affecting the residents of Oro Valley need to be done in public where everyone can see and hear what is happening. The business of the public needs to be done in public. The third point is public safety. I want to ensure Oro Valley retains its reputation as one of the safest places to live in Arizona. As a potential member of council, I will work with Chief Riley to be sure she and the Oro Valley Police have the personnel and the resources they need for us to retain the level of safety for which we have become known. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, Melanie Barrett.
Hi, thank you all for coming, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting this forum. My name is Melanie Barrett. I'm a 13-year resident of Oro Valley, a mother of 4 great children, ages 16 to 5, and my husband works at Raytheon. I grew up in San Diego, and I love to call Oro Valley home and plan to raise my family here. I originally ran for office because I felt families in Oro Valley needed to be represented, and that local government ought to be more responsive to its citizens than to landowners and developers. Now, 4 years later, I'm running for re-election to finish the great track record that we've started and continue making Oro Valley the best place to live, work, and play in Arizona. We were able to listen to our residents when we partnered with them to purchase what is now Vistoso Trails Nature Preserve as a town park, rather than see it turned into homes, apartments, and large senior care facilities. We need leadership that sees the value and potential in this and other parks to see them through the planning stages that are upcoming. In the marketplace, we helped keep Oro Valley beautiful when we asked for a plan that did not include 75-foot, 6-story apartments on a viewshed corridor that blocked beloved Catalina Mountain views and included the largest buildings north of downtown. Now the developer is working on a plan to add housing, 2 hotels, and businesses largely within existing heights. This will help the center thrive while keeping the viewsheds our general plan and residents expect us to protect. With recreational opportunities expanding within existing revenues and no new taxes, business growth over 12%, new employers like Leonardo Electronics, annexing the westward look, and being ranked the safest city in Arizona. I'm very proud of what we have accomplished and look forward to continuing to improve things that make Oro Valley great while protecting the things that make us special and unique. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3, Joyce Jones-Ivy. Joyce?
Thank you, Dave. I am Joyce Jones-Ivy. I am a retired 42-year OBGYN nurse practitioner. I'm married to Jesse Ivy, who was a 29-year servant of LAPD, also retired, and we have one adult son, Adam, who resides with us. I have lived in Oro Valley for 6 years now. For the past 4 years, I've been on council. I've had the privilege to not only serve, but be liaison to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, as well as our Amphi School District. Our community has, since I've been on council, expressed a desire for diversity of outdoor activities for both our seniors and our growing young families. This is a passion for me. It's almost a belief that safe parks, safe community is the best way we can continue to improve the quality of life for all of our town residents. I'm running for re-election so we can finish the accomplishments of our first term and strategically and responsibly continue to manage our town's growth and economic needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Bill Rodman.
Good evening. Thank you to Dave Perry and to the Chamber for sponsoring this event. And thank you for attending.
Bill, I don't think your mic's on. It isn't on.
Where's the turn on?
Here, you can use mine.
Well, where's the turn on here? I don't think so. How do you turn it on?
Here, just use mine.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think mine is on.
Try that again.
Good evening. Thank you to Dave Perry and to the Chamber for sponsoring this event. And as I said, thank you all for attending. I spent 4 years on the Town Council, after 4 years on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I believe I can provide the leadership necessary to overcome the challenges to our town. My opponents have burdened Oro Valley taxpayers with $52 million of debt just in this fiscal year, $42 million in bonds and $10 million in interest, indebting all of us for the next 20 years. This was all done in spite of a looming recession. Most troubling, so much of this was done behind closed doors, without any real input from the community as to how this money will be spent. My campaign is being run with an emphasis upon transparency. Decisions will not be made behind those closed doors. In addition, I'm concerned about economic development. For example, the marketplace. My opponents indicated they would reject the application as presented on the basis that it was too tall, even though it would be no taller than the hospital across the street. It's in a deep valley and blocks no one's views. And they say that too many people would be living or staying there, even though that's the whole point of the live, work, and play model. If we don't work to achieve managed growth, how will we avoid the property tax? The marketplace should be an economic engine, not a center with a 50% vacancy rate. In July 2020, shortly before I left council, I proposed making the community center accessible to our entire community, many of whom struggle with the 17 steps in front of the building and the crumbling ramp in the back next to the dumpsters. I got the council to set aside $750,000 of unexpected federal CARES Act money for that elevator. However, my opponents turned their backs on this issue and did not allocate one penny of the $25 million bond or the $750,000 set aside to solve this problem, until I raised it again several weeks ago at a council meeting. It's time for a change. You can count on me to listen to you.
Thank you, Bill. Josh Nicholson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Josh Nicholson. I was born and raised in Arizona. I went to school to be an airline pilot, air traffic controller, did the airline pilot thing for a while, and now a controller. I moved to Arizona 10 years ago with my beautiful wife and 2 young daughters. Obviously, I joined the council 4 years ago. I've been the Chamber of Commerce liaison. I was on the Budget and Finance Commission while we were doing the pension bond, and also on Visit Tucson. Fairly early on, I pushed to fix our police pension. It was growing like our credit card at 7% a year, compounding yearly. It ended up being $27 million underfunded. With the recommendation of Stifel Consulting, our Budget and Finance Commission, newly elected Budget and Finance Commission, and our town CFO, we ended up using $10 million of our savings and secured a bond at historically low 2.4% interest. This is going to save our taxpayers $30 million over 20 years. This $30 million in savings afforded us to give our police officers a raise. They are now the highest paid officers in southern Arizona. As many departments throughout the nation are struggling to recruit new officers, now our officers are fully funded pension and the highest pay in southern Arizona. This will help with retaining and recruiting the best police force. As many know, I also live on the Conquistador Golf Course, and that was one of the things that we had to tackle the very first year we were in office. We changed operators from Troon to Indigo, and we opened up all the holes to public play. This is saving us millions of dollars. We use this extra cash flow to finance the golf course irrigation, fields in Naranjo Park, tennis courts, and many more without raising any new taxes. I appreciate your time tonight, and I do appreciate everyone getting involved and coming to this chamber event because it's important for our citizens to be involved in our local government. So I thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Josh. Joe Urseg.
Is this working? Okay. Thanks to our chamber for producing this event, to OVCN for your hospitality, to my supporters and all that are in attendance. You know, many years ago, it became clear that my gifts were service, leadership, and administration. I applied these gifts in my community and in business, mindful that at the right time, I would become a servant leader in Oro Valley. I became a fellow with the Flynn Brown Civic Leadership Academy, served as director of the Arizona Small Business Association, and as president, CEO of the Green Valley Sahuarita Chamber. Oro Valley is my home. My kids have graduated and are pursuing their passions. I'm semi-retired, trained up, and I'm ready to serve. Nearly 80% of American voters think government is broken. Why? Because the will of the people is being ignored. And I believe our town council has largely ignored the will of Oro Valley residents for the past 3 years. In the council's search for a new police chief, our will was for an internal search. It was ignored. Officer morale plummeted. We expressed our will in Park and Recreation's statistically valid survey last year for Naranjo Park. Our choices were set aside in deference to unpopular pet projects. Meanwhile, the needs of many young athletes to team sports remain unmet. Our will to keep our golf courses open was finally listened to and acted upon. Golf simultaneously flourished. Neighboring residents' home values were protected. You deserve better. I will listen to and respect your will. I will restore our tradition of inclusion, transparency, and community-driven decisions. I will work tirelessly with our economic development professionals to bring more companies here and to help existing businesses do business better. I'm asking for your vote on August 2nd. I will make your will my priority on the Oro Valley Town Council.
Thank you, Joe. Now comes the questions. I'm going to go alphabetically, starting with Melanie Barrett, and we'll just go right around here. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer these questions. At the end of an answer, I may throw in an interjection or two. And Melanie, we'll start with you. You are running as part of a block of 4 candidates, 3 for council and the mayor. What should the voter infer from your decision to run as a group?
I think we're a diverse group of candidates from different philosophies and backgrounds, but I think that we've accomplished some great things together. And those are the things that we'd like to move forward on. We'd like to be able to move forward on building Naranjo Park, on finishing the improvements at the community center. We'd like to be able to move forward with Vistoso Trails Nature Preserve. We'd like to continue bringing in businesses, high-quality businesses like Leonardo that came into Innovation Park. We'd like to continue protecting our valuable employment and commercial land. Those are things that I think that we would really want to continue. We've got an annexation policy that's been approved by this council, and we were able to successfully annex the Westward Look Resort, bringing in almost $800,000 of revenue every year to the town. So we have a great track record of things we've worked on, and those are things we'd like to continue together. Thanks.
Joe, and I'll ask you to hold applause as we do questions, please. Joe, what do you infer about the fact that 3 members of council and the mayor are running as a block?
Well, I guess I'd have to point to the fact that we are not running as a block because we, as individuals, even though we have very common interests and common goals, we as individuals want to listen individually to our constituents and to the residents of Oro Valley, and are set to be able to make decisions based on individually what is important. We chose not to run as a block simply because we are confident that our positions are such that they are in line with the will of Oro Valley residents, and I am grateful to be running with the other three men, not with them, but sharing their views.
Thank you. Charlie, what does it mean when the other four are running as a block?
Well, I think that it presents an image of groupthink. I'm not sure that that's true, but it does present an image of groupthink. What I'm concerned about is what is the philosophy that one should have with Oro Valley. We as a group have a similar philosophy, but we are approaching that philosophy from different standpoints, from different techniques. And so while we are prepared and I think ready to make Oro Valley an even better place, this is a special place, but we bring individual ideas. And the other thing that I believe that we do well is we listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce, Josh, Joyce, we'll start with you. Are there issues upon which you differ with the other three candidates that you're running with?
We are indeed running as a block or running as, excuse me, the name just escaped me, but even though we are running as a group, it does not mean that we all represent the same ideas and the same way of doing things. If any of you have ever looked at our council meetings, you see the diversity in thought and idea and in our discussion on any given topic. We are not a 7-0 council by any means at all. The fact that we are running together also represents the diversity in age, ethnicity. We represent seniors, we represent our young, growing families. And so for 4 years, we have listened to you, or we would not have made the gains in the golf that we did by decreasing. Oh gosh, okay.
Thank you, Joyce.
I'm trying to adhere to time.
Josh, are there issues upon which you disagree with the other three?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, like Joyce said, we don't vote 7-0. The prior council has voted 7-0 almost all the time, except for the very last few months. I think there was a couple 6-1 votes. Yeah, we definitely don't vote together all the time. And we ran together simply resources. I know I put $3,000 in my own campaign last time. I know the other four together was over $120,000. So you see some of the yellow shirts in here. It was just resources. We grabbed volunteers. We had to work together in order to win. So it was a group effort. It was a community effort to win last time. And it was very hard. And we're still doing it today. I should be keeping my eyes on you to make sure I'm not going over. But, yeah, we definitely don't vote all the time. We do have a diverse thought process. I mean, me and Melanie are roughly the same age. Joyce and Joe are roughly different age, and we represent different groups. I'm on the golf course. They're not on the golf course. So, yeah, it definitely has interesting conversations at times, but I think we get... Thank you.
And by the way, just to clarify, you can finish thoughts.
Okay.
We're just trying to make sure that
Thank
we
you
stay
very
within
much.
the limit there. I'm
Rule
sorry.
follower.
All right. Bill, they're running as a block. What should the voter infer?
Well, I think they certainly can infer that they are thinking the same things, that they are in favor of the same the same things. Is that bad or good? I don't know. That's up to the voter to decide. I think it sends a message that perhaps they aren't thinking separately. Having been on the council, I do know that a lot of the discussion happens before a council meeting. So oftentimes it is more likely for a vote to be 6-1, 7-0, 4-3, but the people will have gotten a lot of their questions answered. But I don't think it's a good signal to send that we are running together and you can expect the same answers and you can accept the fact that if one of us says something, the others will follow. I've heard them say that they don't have a lot of 7-0 votes. Well, they don't, because they have at least 2 council members who don't agree with them. So it could never be more than 5-2 from that standpoint. But I think it's something for the voter to decide. Do they have independent thinkers on the council or don't they?
Thank you. New question, similar vein about politics. Joe Urseg, you get the first crack at this. The people running together have said that they do not accept donations from real estate developers, and they're implying that you do. I don't know if you have any of those kinds of donations. Their influence is that campaign donations from interest groups would influence your consideration of development projects. What should voters infer about candidates who are willing to accept donations from special interest groups?
You know, thanks for the question. I think that there are something around 75 people so far who have contributed to my campaign. And of those people, there have to be a number, several, that are business people that want to see wise decisions made as far as our town is concerned. And let's face it, finances are an important element of us having a successful town. It's the lifeblood of everything that we want to accomplish here in Oro Valley in terms of safety and schools and our streets. So the point is, I would accept money from any businessman who cares for our community, whether they're in development or in home building. That's just fine. Those folks built our community, and I'd be totally comfortable in receiving funding from them.
Charlie, you get the next crack at that. What should the voter infer about candidates willing to accept donations from developers and others?
Well, let's be sure that we're talking about the same thing here. What we're talking about are business people who are willing to invest not just thousands, millions of dollars into Oro Valley to do what? Yeah, they want to make a profit, but they also want to make Oro Valley a wonderful place, to continue making Oro Valley a wonderful place. So yes, I will accept money from business people who wish to invest. Why? Because I choose not to disenfranchise them. They are people who have as much right to talking with members of council, me and others, as anyone else. Should the inference be that money buys the vote? Ain't buying my vote, but if that's the inference you wish to take, you've taken the wrong inference.
Thank you, Charlie. Joyce, what should people think about candidates who accept donations from business people and interest groups?
I've been around a long time. As you can see by my gray hair, I'm not a young woman. To sit here and tell me that special interest does not influence decisions is disingenuous. It does. As we look around what politics and what's happening today, that's exactly what's going on. When I made the decision not to accept special interest money, it was based on the fact that I would like to independently consider what they're offering, but also with input from our constituents, consider what their desire is, and I can do that independently without that financial influence.
Thank you. Josh, you said on your website the decision not to accept donations from developers is, quote, a way to ensure impartial decisions when zoning requests arise. Do you think all donations taint the recipient, Josh?
I don't know all the decisions, but I will say, like, I've been lobbying the federal government on the federal level. I go to D.C. every year for the last 10 years to lobby for pay and retirement for federal law enforcement, federal firefighters, and air traffic controllers. We had a $2 million PAC fund 10 years ago. It grew to $9 million. And I can tell you that when we had the extra $7 million, we started giving out more money, $10,000 checks to candidates. We started getting votes. Now, do I say that people will vote for you every time if you give them a donation? No, it doesn't happen. But there's a relationship there. Kind of like if, your brother gives you $1,000 to help you with education, and he's asking you to watch the babies every 2 weeks. Like, okay, well, I guess I kind of have to do that. You're going to feel a little bit of moral guilt if you don't vote for them if you take their campaign donations. So that's why I personally don't take donations from developers. I do believe in helping our businesses, and that's okay.
Great, thank you. Bill, what's the inference for voters when people accept donations from business and interest groups?
Well, I think what they should infer is that these are business people who are investing their own money. They are investing and trying to help our town grow. And we need to grow in order to be able to continue to finance what we need to do for our town. These people are not just walking in and deciding to take something from the town. They're taking their own money. And they are, in fact, risking the fact that perhaps they're going to lose money. They do it at the wrong time. They do it the wrong way. They go into what we do as a council, or before that, the planning and zoning in the process. We could decide that, in fact, we can't get where we need to go and they need to go. So they will have expended a whole lot of money. I'm a little concerned. I'm hoping that we don't go there as a group up here on the stage. I could decide that perhaps there was an accusation that I could be bought. Those of you who have watched me and been part of when I was on the council in planning and zoning know that's not true. What they've got is they've got a fairness and a respect for me. I will listen to them, I will talk, and we'll see if we can get there. If we can't, then I'm sorry, the money didn't mean a thing.
Thank you. Melanie, you get the last word on that one. What do donations from special interest, the developer's business, say about candidates?
Thank you. Well, not taking donations from developers and special interests allows us to deal with them at an arm's length transaction and make sure that we're representing the best interests of our Oro Valley residents. Some examples of that were the Westward Look annexation, in which we were able to have residents happy. The Vistoso Trails Nature Preserve, in which we were able to add a great amenity to our town. The marketplace, where we're going to be able to have a great amenity that isn't going to be blocking scenic views. Even fixing the town golf courses was helpful to be able to have an arm's length transaction in negotiating with the resort and others around it, in being able to make sure that we were able to get a new operator and fix those $2 million a year of golf losses. So we've been able to do some great things by being able to have an arm's length transaction with special interests and developers and make sure that we represent you, the residents of Oro Valley, and that's what we're here for. And finally, I'd like to just ask Mr. Perry to please ask all the candidates the same question, if you would.
I'll try to do that, sure.
Thank you.
For that. Next subject is growth. Charlie, you get the first shot at this. You have suggested the incumbents have a, quote, no growth agenda. Do you believe Oro Valley needs to grow, and if so, how should it grow?
Yes, Oro Valley does need to grow. Now, it needs to grow wisely. And what do I mean by that? What we have is a town that has no property tax. Let us be clear, I don't want one. What we have is a town that largely is funded via sales tax. It takes no great economic genius. All you have to do is go to the grocery store and you're spending more money. And the town is the same way. We are spending more money. Simple things keep adding up. What I would like to do is to model out across the horizon a way for the town to grow and to grow smartly. I'm not talking about massive growth, but I am talking about growth that gets us where we need to be.
Thank you. Joyce, does Oro Valley need to grow? If so, how?
Oro Valley indeed needs to grow. What we're dealing with right now is limited land resources in which we can grow. So we have strategically decided how to do this in the best interest of our community. We approved a comprehensive community economic development planning program. We also approved a comprehensive annexation plan. That's how we ended up with Westford Look. That's how we ended up with Leonardo Electronics, willing to invest $100 million in our community and bring in 170 jobs. It has to be done strategically, and that's what we have committed ourselves to.
Thank you. Josh, do you believe Oro Valley needs to grow, and if so, how?
I agree that we do need to grow, and it does need to be strategic. We don't get sales tax revenue from an apartment unit. We get the money when that apartment unit goes out and spends money. So annexing high-density retail development is the best path forward. When we annexed Westward Look, it wasn't a whole lot of service, but we brought in $800,000 of extra revenue for the town residents. That helps us expand services. We in our strategic leadership plan, we requested an annexation strategy plan to develop a plan to annex smartly, to produce the best amount of income for residents so we have the greatest amount of income so we can provide the best resources. My plan, I would prefer to annex down Oracle Road because we have Whole Foods, we have a lot of dense retail, which is a lot of dense sales tax revenue and it would just provide a lot more income for our residents in our town to provide better services for our residents.
Thank you. Bill, does Oro Valley need to grow, and if so, how?
The way our town is financed, it requires growth, smart growth, managed growth, something that makes the most sense of where, when, and why. The fact of the matter is most of our revenue is based on population. The state shared revenue is based on the population of our town vis-a-vis other taxing bodies in the state. We don't grow and they do, we get less money. Our sales tax we can control. It's one of the few times that a taxpayer can decide how much they want to pay. Because if in fact they don't have the money to pay, or they don't want to spend the money, they in fact don't shop in Oro Valley because they don't have to pay that sales tax. They in fact can decide that, and they can shop somewhere else. The fact that the bed tax is something that again requires people coming to the town and spending money. And so basically, the only thing we can't control is the utility tax. If we don't have that, if we don't grow, our expenses will continue. But if we don't grow, in fact, we'll have to go to something like a property tax to fill in that gap. And you don't have a choice. You sell your house or you pay the property tax.
Thank you. Melanie, do you believe Oro Valley needs to grow, and if so, how?
Yes, I think Oro Valley does need to grow. We have a limited amount of land left. We do have an annexation strategy to try and pursue future annexations. The limited amount of land left, a lot of it's commercial land, and we need to be careful to make sure that we protect land that can bring in resources, land that can bring in revenue, and land that can bring in employers to help make Oro Valley the live, work, and play community, and make sure that we keep bringing in revenue into the future. So it is important that we do that. We need to manage growth in a smart way. We talked about that earlier, making sure that we're representing the residents of Oro Valley when we make decisions on growth. So it is important. We are going to eventually get to the point where there's only so much land in Oro Valley. So we're going to keep looking for annexations, for future opportunities to continue our town's growth, to be able to bring in commercial primarily and employment land to continue that town revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, you get the last crack. Do you believe Oro Valley needs to grow? If so, how?
Well, one thing that's for certain on death taxes and also the people who are going to be wanting to move to Oro Valley. We need to make sure that I share everybody else's response that we need to make sure that Oro Valley manages its growth wisely. It's my understanding that Rancho Vistoso has roughly 1/3 the number of homes as was designed for it to have. We don't have the kinds of revenues coming from that as we had wanted. So we need more growth. However, more growth is not a good thing if we don't have enough economic development. It's important that we increase the number of good paying jobs here in Oro Valley so that people aren't living here and then actually working someplace else. We need to make sure that those 5 revenue streams that Bill was talking about, that those revenue streams continue so that we don't have a residential property tax. That would be a killer.
Thank you, Joe. We're going to turn our attention to the marketplace, and we'll have several questions about the marketplace. Trying to keep track of time. Joyce, you get the first shot at this one. Town West, a member of our chamber and its partners, own Oro Valley Marketplace. They came to council several years ago now with ambitious plans, $334 million in investment, 2 large and taller apartment communities, 3 hotels, and an entertainment district. That proposal got unanimous approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Then, after hours of testimony and work, Mayor and Council turned that proposal away and asked Town West to return with a proposal that fit within existing heights and setbacks with building heights of not more than 39 feet. Why is that a good decision on part of Council?
I want you to clarify that for me. Why is what a good decision?
Why is it a good decision to ask Town West to come back with something different and less height and less density?
Given the current code standards that we have for heights, we merely asked them if they would please come back with a plan that would meet those heights. That's not unreasonable. It can be done. And they have come back with a second plan. We looked at it in a study session. It's going to be coming back to council. I'm really interested in seeing what that is going to be so that we can make a decision at that time.
Thank you. And Josh, I know I'm fumbling the question.
It's
Why
okay.
was it a good decision by Council to ask Town West to come back with a different proposal?
All right, so I would say one thing, when they first came to us, they're asking for garden-style apartments, and then 3.5 years later, or 3 years later, they came back with 6-story, 75-foot tall apartments. So in Oro Valley, and in politics in general, it's good to find the balance. So initially, it's just retail. There's no apartments, no hotels. So we did agree to let hotels, and we also agreed to let apartments. And hotels actually bring extra revenue. But I do believe in some amount of compromise. Like, thank you. We agreed to do 39 feet tall, and now they're coming back to us to try and ask for taller use for the hotels. But I think it's good for Oro Valley residents because for a lot of us, the view corridor does make a difference. And there's just a certain quality. You can talk about the numbers all day, but there's a certain amount of what Oro Valley is. You can't put a number or a digit to it, but it's just a quality and a feeling of what Oro Valley is. And I think the 39 feet restriction helped maintain that.
And Bill, again, as I continue to fumble along here, you weren't on the council. What was your opinion of the decision to ask Town West to come back with less height and less density?
Well, when the marketplace was originally put together, they were anticipating a great number of new homes within the 5-mile radius of that marketplace to make it worthwhile, because you need to have the consumers. That didn't happen. Part of it was because there was, in fact, a great recession, as we all know. What they learned and what Town West learned was that they need to bring the consumers actually to live and work and play at what would be called the village center. Because then they're there. Not only do we get the other tax revenue in the town, but in fact the people will go out their door and they will spend money at that and they'll eat in the restaurants, and we'll get more commercial people. Because commercial doesn't come first. The consumers come first. They won't come in and open a restaurant because, well, maybe somebody will come. So what they've done is they learned. So they came and said, we are down in a valley. We're talking about view sheds of a 6,000 Push Ridge and a 9,000 Mount Lemon. Sorry, 75 feet doesn't block anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie, I'll try to ask the question correctly. Why was it a good decision to ask Town West to come back with a proposal with less height and less density?
Thank you. I've already mentioned the marketplace. I really believe in protecting the things that make Oro Valley great and make us special. And our view shed of the Catalinas is one of the most precious assets that we have, one of the things that really makes us great and special. Our general plan designates Tangerine Road as a scenic corridor and states that the setback needs to be 4 times as far back from the road as the building is tall. This particular building was taller than it was set back from the road and required 15 zoning exceptions in order to get this plan through. We're negotiating with Town West. We're looking for opportunities to bring forward a win-win solution. And I'm proud of the opportunity to do that for our residents. And I think that that's something that will allow us to have the center be vibrant and protect our quality of life and our view sheds and our general plan on the scenic corridor of Tangerine Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, what did you think about the decision by council to ask Town West to come back with a proposal of less height and less density?
You know, I think the original proposal was a good proposal. It's not perfect. We certainly don't need another splash pad. But what we are absent of is a town center. And I believe this new design that Town West has come back, and by the way, that design was recommended by Planning and Zoning on a vote of 6-1. Now 50% of the spaces in the marketplace are empty. We need a community center. We need a place for people to enjoy community in Oro Valley. And I believe that we need to get that passed and find some way to do so. I know that there's some technicalities in terms of height and setbacks, but we need to find a way to get this to happen. The construction tax alone is worth over $10 million to our community. We need to have this happen.
Thank you. Charlie, you get the last whack at this one. Your opinion about the decision to ask Town West to come back with a shorter and less dense proposal?
I think it was the wrong decision. It sent a wrong signal to entrepreneurs who wish to come into Oro Valley. I think what we have done in the past, and I and Melanie Barrett were on Planning and Zoning when we approved a 5-story building, Nakoma Sky. That building was never built, but why did we even bother to approve it? Because of topography. I agree, 3 stories is what zoning says. But if what you don't do is to see a 5-story building when you're driving down Tangerine or driving up Oracle and you only see 1 story, I'm happy. Happy why? Because someone has a vision for putting in something that works. We need to figure out ways to say yes instead of saying no.
Thank you. We're going to stay on the marketplace, and Joyce, because you went first, you're going to get another chance to answer a question first. On March 14th, 2006, voters of this community incentivized the development of the marketplace by giving millions in sales tax rebates to Vestar, the original owner and developer. On the ballot, voters called for creation of a, quote, regional lifestyle, entertainment, and power retail center at Oracle and Tangerine. Does that vote matter to you in your current deliberations?
Long question. Break it down.
Let me try this, Joyce. The voters said they wanted a power retail entertainment lifestyle center at Oracle and Tangerine.
Got that.
Does that affect your thinking about these new proposals?
It doesn't impact my thinking in terms of what the needs of our community are. Yes, do we need the resources, the revenues? We need the revenues. But any idea is not a good idea. Something spectacular, as long as it's within the architectural boundaries of our P&Z, our codes. I just feel like there's nothing wrong with us asking, come back, this is what our current codes are, how can you meet that? And that's exactly what we did. So, Do we need it? Yes, we need it. Are we against it? No, we're not against it. But we want them to bring something that's not going to clash with the architectural design of our community.
Thank you, Joyce. Sorry about my fumble there. Josh, does that vote matter to you in your current deliberations about the marketplace?
Anytime citizens vote, it should matter to a public official. It does matter to me. For me, having an entertainment district, being still in my 40s, I would love it. And I talked to a lot of people and they would love it too. So I think the bigger question is who's paying for it, how it's getting paid for. And those are executive session meetings because it's contractual, so we can't talk about those type of things here. But I do believe the plan that they're presenting, even with the 39-foot restrictions, they are planning to build an entertainment district. And I would like to have a place where I could go and have a beer, have a drink, and hang out with friends and take an Uber home.
Bill, does that vote matter from 2006 as you would deliberate on the marketplace's future?
Well, I think it matters that whenever voters weigh in on what they think should happen in the future of our town. Things do change, though, in, 15 years, in terms of what we thought was going to happen when it was first voted in. We thought we were going to have all those other homes around, and there was going to be there was a way for what they were proposing to actually work. It turned out it did not, because it didn't have enough consumers. But it also said we need a gathering place, is what I also read out of that vote. A gathering place where we can all go and see our friends and neighbors. Okay, so that part of it, I think, still continues. I said, the fact is that with the center the way it was, it didn't work. We needed to bring people in, we needed to give entertainment, we needed to create that gathering place. And that's what we're doing, or at least what they were trying to do. I'm afraid the current council is not going to allow that to happen. And this was a time we could fix what didn't work the first time. I wish we'd do it.
Thank you. Melanie, does that vote matter to you in your current deliberations about the marketplace?
Anytime voters vote, it matters to any elected official. It does matter. That prior vote resulted in a rebate of the sales tax being given to the marketplace, which ended up being substantially less amount of sales tax than was initially predicted. Things change over a certain period of years. When that rebate came back to the town of Oro Valley and we no longer had to give that to the marketplace developer, the prior council was planning to use that rebate for golf course irrigation. We've been able to do the golf course irrigation under existing community center revenues by fixing the golf courses and the golf operators. We took that money and paid it towards our unfunded police pension liability of then grew to $27 million. And then we were able to expand on paying that. So we've been able to do good things with that revenue that has come back from the sales tax rebate that resulted from that vote. I think it will be a good thing when the marketplace comes forward, and I look forward to being able to work with Town West to develop something that's great for our community.
Thank you, Melanie. Joe, does that vote matter to you if you were to deliberate on the marketplace?
Well, make it 100% in terms of votes mattering from our people in our community. But a great deal has changed since that time. How many people could have imagined that 90% of what was purchased is being done so over the internet? It's crazy. We had, I know, an effort here in Oro Valley we were looking at the establishment of 2 town centers. We did that in the same thing down in the town of Sahuarita, but how people shop has majorly changed. People are just shopping from their sofas, and we need to change with the changing times. So, yeah, that vote mattered, but a lot has changed since 2006.
Charlie, I think you might get the last crack at that one. Does that vote matter to you if you were to deliberate about the marketplace?
Well, of course it does. One of the things we need to look at is the historical context of the marketplace and how it was developed and what it needs to be in the future. The town has brought in any number of economic consultants who have said, you simply don't have enough rooftops or people to drive the businesses that you wanted in the marketplace. So now what we need to do is to re-envision the marketplace. And that's what Town West is doing. And that's what I would support as a way of looking at making this work. There was a vision. Pieces of it are still important and should be implemented. But does it mean that we must slavishly follow what was decided 15 years ago? I would hope not. I hope we have better ideas in
Thank you. I
15
got to
years.
pick up my pace here. We're going to go quickly on a couple of subjects. First is annexation. Josh, you've talked about the annexation of the westward look. My question is, what argument would you make in developed areas such as Ina and Oracle for annexation into Oro Valley?
All right, can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. What argument would you make in developed areas at Ina and Oracle, for example, for those communities, those places to annex into Oro Valley?
Well, I mean, everyone follows money, right? So the biggest reason to try and change from one area to another, let's say you're Pima County and you're moving into Oro Valley, would be that the value of your property goes up. So the argument that I would make to, let's say, the person at Whole Foods, let's say their property's worth $10 million, but if they change their address to Oro Valley, it's a little bit higher end than Pima County, sorry, Pima County. But let's say the value goes up $10 million. If their property's worth $10 million, if they annex in, you're going to be worth $1 million more now. You can refinance your property, pull all the cash, and you can go invest and buy another Whole Foods shopping center. So that's what I try and encourage landowners to think about is the value of what we give them. We give them high-quality police officers, police force. Hopefully the value would go up, and I would imagine that we could use the town resources to show them, like, and realtors and associations to say, hey, your land in Pima County is worth X amount of dollars. If you move into Oro Valley, it's going to be this. You're also going to have the police force, and you get to be a part of this awesome community. You also get we do business visits for Oro Valley businesses, and we have the Adopt-A-Cop. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, what argument would you make in developed areas such as Ina and Oracle for annexation into the community?
Well, the first one's public safety. You're in Pima County or in Tucson, your public safety resources are much, much different. The response time from public safety for things that protect your stores, your commercial properties, your restaurants, that's an important thing for anybody, but especially any commercial places. And Ina and Oracle, of course, is all commercial. And so that one by itself ought to be enough. The response time in Tucson or Pima County, sometimes it never happens, much less be a slow response time. I think also the services that we provide in terms of roads and in terms of the other services that we can give to them that is much more focused than something that's part of a large county or a large city. And I think people, they worry about whether they'll pay more taxes, but they don't pay property taxes, not in Oro Valley. They pay other taxes without question, but they have a better opportunity to control more what they're paying. Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie, what's the argument you would make in developed areas such as Ina and Oracle for annexation into the community?
Well, you can be a part of the great community of Oro Valley, the safest city in Arizona, have access to the highest paid police officers in southern Arizona, and get to enjoy the Oro Valley Chamber of Commerce and the programs that we worked to set up with them, such as help during the pandemic. The mayor's done a lot of business visits, Oro Valley Next Steps, which was Joyce's idea, doing some great things in the pandemic. And I wouldn't be opposed to looking at if there's any possibility for economic development agreements that could reasonably, legally, and safely be worked out in those regards. So that would definitely be something that I would have people take a look at moving forward. I think it would be great for people to join Oro Valley and businesses to benefit from the services and the safety that Oro Valley provides.
Thank you. Joe, what's the argument you would make in developed areas for annexation into the community?
I think it's a wonderful trade, our safety and our services in exchange for sales tax revenues. We have 5 areas of revenue for the town, And sales taxes is an important part of that. And that Oracle-Ina area in particular is what I'm thinking of, has a great deal of sales tax revenues that we could take advantage of and wisely grow our town. So I think that's a fair exchange.
Charlie? Do you need me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Sure. What's the argument you would make in developed areas such as Ina and Oracle for annexation into the community?
The first thing is you get to partner with a wonderful community, number one. Number two, the income level in Oro Valley is higher than it is in the county, at least in that area of the county. So what you can do is you can make the argument to business, you can bring in people from Oro Valley. Some of them are already shopping there, I will admit. Now, you get the opportunity as well to have the resources, as have been mentioned before. Some of this might just be an argument that says ditto, but I will need to add this piece to it. Why are we restricting ourselves to Ina and Oracle? Why not pull a Marana and go all the way down to River?
Thank you.
I second that
Joyce, you get the last answer here, Joyce. What's the argument you would make in developed areas, apparently all the way down to River, for annexation into the community, Joyce?
No property tax. But besides what has been mentioned, our business model that our police department has is one that can't be beat. We not only offer coverage, we also have a philosophy. You all just need to talk with our new chief, Kara Riley. Even though some of our corporate businesses have decided that they don't want to call our police department because of theft, it's been decided that we have a no tolerance for crime, not even shoplifting, and she's encouraging them, please call us. We can have high visibility around your businesses to keep you safe, and I think to keep crime away from our businesses is the best thing we can do for them.
Thank you, Joyce. Josh, I want to get to state land for a second. We were negotiating with state land concerning annexation of the Tangerine 880, north and south of Tangerine Road. That process stopped. Should it be resumed?
Oh, I hope they resume it. They want residential. I think it'd be beneficial for us to have a little bit more retail, or maybe even a community college would be a great thing to have in Oro Valley. But besides that, I think I would hope that they possibly come back to us. If we do go to a recession, the state this is a big chunk of their revenue. So a lot of economists are thinking that we're going to be possibly going into a recession here soon. That's a big chunk of their revenue is selling state land. So my hope is within the next couple of years, if the recession, I don't want a recession, trust me, but if there was a recession, that they would possibly come back to us, because hopefully they'll be needing money, and it could be an opportunity for us to get construction sales tax and possibly another area for a place to put jobs or retail.
Bill, should we resume conversations with state land concerning annexation of the Tangerine 880?
We should never have allowed it to stop. Then again, we have 5% of our developable land available within the town boundaries. We have 880 acres out there where the beneficiary, if it's sold, the money that comes in goes to the Common School Fund. So it isn't just the state that takes the money, it goes to schools. And since we're about 50th in the nation in funding our schools, perhaps that's something we all should be interested in doing. But in fact, we should I don't know what happened in that we had a number of meetings with state land, and it was moving, but there were a lot of barriers being put up by many people that were now running my opponents. And it got to the point where the state land folks said, we have 8 million acres to manage, 8 million. This is 885. We don't have time for people who are going to put barriers in front of this annexation. So we're going to move on. And if you ever are really interested in working with us, then we'll come back. And that's what, if I'm elected, that's one of the first things I'm going to do.
Melanie, should we resume conversations with state land concerning the annexation of the Tangerine Road 880?
First of all, this is up to the state land of whether we can have these conversations. They're the ones who had staffing shortages and decided that they didn't want to continue to pursue that annexation at that time. And they could choose to come back. Oro Valley has made clear to the state lands that we're open for them to come back and continue that conversation. There are some very important things that need to be looked at when we take a look at that. We should have tech park and retail on that state land so that we can see that that annexation benefits Oro Valley. If it's entirely residential, then the annexation is not financially beneficial to Oro Valley. We need to make sure that we would have those opportunities for employment and retail on that land. We also need to take a good hard look at the water. That land would have to be entirely supplied with CAP water, and that comes from Oro Valley's existing allocation. So that's something that when we do have those conversations with state lands, we'll need to study based on the way that the water situation is at the moment that we would be moving forward. So we do want to pursue those discussions, and we'll do that when state lands is ready. Thanks.
Thank you. Joe, should we resume conversations with state land about the Tangerine 880?
Yes, in addition to resuming those conversations, we need to be prepared with our own plan for what to do with that land. It's my understanding that they are charged with the responsibility of making sure that maximum use for the land is obtained. And so we need to be in a position to offer plans for the maximum and best use of that land. I think we need to be proactive and begin that process now because we do need to expand.
Charlie? Do you need
Yes,
me to-
I
Go ahead.
agree. We never should have stopped, and even if it was state land trust that stopped, we should have pressed the issue. That land will be developed. The question is by whom? And I would want to see that land developed, whether it is residential or commercial, by Oro Valley. That's the goal. What we can do is to present probably a better plan to state land than we have in the past. The surrounding neighbors are not terribly pleased with any kind of annexation. Well, it wouldn't be an annexation. Any kind of use of that land for residential or other uses, because they were promised that that was state land and would never be built on. Wrong. It will be developed. Is Marana going to do it? They can't. But we can and we should.
Joyce, should the town resume talks with state land over the Tangerine 880?
We certainly should resume talks with them. As Melanie said, the reason why talks fell down was because we were in negotiations with them, and they started to have major staffing changes. And so we didn't terminate negotiations with them. They terminated with us because of those issues. Now, I hope they've gotten their staffing back to a level where they can bring that back to us, because we will certainly deal with it.
Thank you. I'm cognizant of time. We're going to do one more question. Bill, you get first shot at this one, please. This council has spent millions of dollars in reserves and bonds to reduce Oro Valley's police pension obligations. It's given raises to police officers. It's issued $25 million in bonds to build out Narana Park, replace golf course, irrigation systems, and build other amenities. Our general fund budget is near $50 million. My question is, what would you have done differently?
Well, first of all, I was not in favor of the pay down of the $17 million bond and the $10 million of our cash for the PSPRS. There was no crisis involved there. We were fulfilling a plan that we already had. The PSPRS trustees tell us every year how much you have to pay, and it includes some catch-up. And then each of the last several years, we did, in fact, add money because we had it. But we didn't want to be locked into a certain amount of increased things for any time period. And so I would not have done it. I would have continued to pay as we could. We have a recession coming. We've locked in now 20 years of an actual payment, no matter what. No matter at least what the return on the investment is, we're there. That didn't have to happen. We were 60% better. We were in the 60 percentile. That better than 60% of the other bodies in the state. So we didn't need to do that. In terms of the $25 million bond, several years ago, I ran out of time.
I'm sorry about that. And Melanie, I have to rephrase the question because you made the decision. Why were those good decisions to invest those funds in police pensions, pay raises, bonds for Naranja, and other uses?
They were absolutely great decisions. They've set Oro Valley up for a great financial future. Oro Valley now has more than double our amount in our reserve policy that's required by our policy at the end of this fiscal year's budget. Our budget is doing very well. The police pension, we were able to refinance those at record low rates. If we'd kept going the way we were going, we would have spent $30 million more to the taxpayers over the next 20 years and threatened having police pension cost 100% of payroll. The bonds for parks are going to be paid for entirely by money that used to be spent just to golf operations. So there's no new taxes for residents, and we're going to be able to bring in a lot of great new amenities and services for our residents. We've set Oro Valley up for a great financial future. Our budget has been doing incredibly well this year. We've got plenty of money in our reserves, and we're going to have the ability to weather whatever comes in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Joe, what would you have done differently with this spending plan?
I absolutely wouldn't rescue something that didn't need rescuing. We had a plan. We were progressing with that plan, and we could sure use the dollars heading into this, what is very much looking to be a recession. I would rather have the dollars in the bank as opposed to having paid that off sooner than we had to. We had a plan and it was working, and I would not have done that. There's many other needs for that money that I would have dedicated.
Thank you. Charlie, what would you have done differently with that spending plan?
Well, one of the things I would have done is to have had a lot more public input. I don't remember being asked about the bonding. Are the things that the bond is covering important? Yes. But we had a pay-as-you-go policy. That seems to have gone away. It is important that what we do is we make sure that our police force is well-funded and that the pension fund for the police is funded in an appropriate way. What we've now done is to have saddled ourselves with a $50 million debt. I'm not sure that, no, I am sure that that is not what I would have done.
Thank you. Joyce, why were those decisions for pension obligations, raises, $25 million in bonds for recreation facilities, why were those good decisions in your mind?
Why paying off the pension was a good decision? That was growing at a 7% rate annually. In 10 years, we would have owed them $54 million. That does not seem fiscally responsible to me. We actually cut our golf subsidies. This year will be the first year that we will not be subsidizing golf, and we will be making a profit. We will not see another bond interest rate at 2.3, 2.4% in any kind of future. So it was fiscally responsible decision to make. Now, we're never, ever totally going to be free of recession. Decisions made now were made to ensure our financial future. That's why we did it.
Thank you. Josh, why were those good decisions made with the budget?
Well, I would take the opinion of Stifel, who's an international bond financing firm, and they said it was a great idea, a great plan. It's going to save us $30 million. And like Ursig was saying, there should be a plan. There was a plan in place, and it wasn't working. It was growing every year. We took the marketplace funds of $800,000, we poured that in for 2 years, and it was still growing. So we needed to fix a problem. Was it an emergency? It was an emergency. But when fixing it now, we locked in a 2.4% interest bond for 30 years. That payment goes like this. The bond, the pension issue, it was growing like this. Just like your mortgage for 30 years, the payment's same price. When you're 30 years old to the time you're 60, when you're 6 years old, we're like, oh, wow, that's a great price for that house, right? But a credit card bill, if you don't pay off your credit card bill for 30 years, it gets pretty big pretty fast. And it was the right call, but don't take my opinion, take the opinion of Stifel. They said it was a great idea to pay off this police pension because it will save us $30 million. And at the worst case scenario, if it didn't bring in 7% returns, if it brought in 5% returns, it's still going to be $9 million.
Thank you, Josh. I got 10 more questions, but we don't have time for them, I'm afraid. We'll come back next week and resume. No, seriously, we're not going to do that. It is time for closing statements, and each of the candidates has 1 minute to make closing statements. We begin with Charlie Hurt.
Thank you. In closing, I believe I can make a difference in the future quality of this special place that we call home. My vision for Oro Valley is an inclusive, multi-generational community embracing residential, commercial, artistic, and leisure activities while supporting wisely managed growth that benefits the community in a safe and secure environment. To achieve that concept for a community of excellence, we have to manage change and we have to manage it wisely. Our challenge will be to find a balance between addressing current issues and the long-term impact of our decisions. I believe I have the right skill set, temperament, and experience to be a valuable voice on the Oro Valley Town Council. In closing, I want to thank you for your attendance and attention. I am asking for your vote for a seat on Town Council. But what is even more important is that you support the future of Oro Valley. Please vote August 2nd.
Thank you. Melanie Barrett, your closing statement.
All right, thank you. I'm glad for tonight because it helped clarify some of the issues and why I'm running for council. I'm thankful to these gentlemen who are willing to run. It's a hard thing to run for council. But if these gentlemen running against the current council are elected, we will have no women on the council. We will have no members on the council under the age of 50. We will have no paid police pension because they've said they're against the police pension. They've provided support for 6-story apartments in our scenic corridor. No Naranja Park build-out for our residents and our families. So those are things that are important to me, that we keep those things that make Oro Valley special. We're doing great things. We're the safest community in Arizona. We're moving in the right direction. We're bringing in businesses and employers, annexing resorts, managing balanced growth in a smart way to balance our financial future and our residents. So I'd ask for your vote to be able to continue moving Oro Valley in a forward direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce, your closing statement, please.
Thank you, Dave. I believe that Oro Valley is a better place today because we have been in office. We've listened to our residents and we've made decisions that benefit everyone in our community. We've saved our golf. We've also reduced the price of golf. We have supported the Visosos Trails Nature Preserve. We've also planned to expand Naranja Park, all while improving our finances without any increased taxes. I want to continue to be able to follow this trajectory, and so I am asking you for your vote. I definitely think what we've done has never been done in this town before in terms, oh goodness gracious, of our comprehensive economic development plan, our annexation plan. We have a roadmap to get this town where it needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Rodman, your closing statement.
Thanks again to Dave Perry and the Chamber for sponsoring this event, and to the Church of the Nazarene for hosting it. As I stated earlier, my opponents have indebted Oro Valley residents to an additional $52 million in one fiscal year, without any real public input. I'm dedicated to greater fiscal responsibility, increased emphasis upon public safety, providing accessibility to the community center to all members of the community, and to bringing transparency, integrity, and change to Oro Valley. I am committed to smart economic development and welcoming new businesses to Oro Valley, and I'm committed to manage growth in order to avoid a property tax. Thank you for being here, for your patience and your attention. I'm sending a special thank you to my wife, Judy, and to my dedicated supporters. Please join my campaign and vote for me for Oro Valley Town Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Josh Nicholson, your closing statement.
Okay, I had a drafted up closing statement, but I did want to address one thing, the transparency. And Bill, understand, when he's talking about transparency, he's talking about executive sessions. You know, executive sessions are when we have to deal with contracts, hiring, firing, those type of things. And the biggest thing I want to talk about the transparency is, yes, we did have a lot of executive sessions because we inherited a whole lot of issues from the prior council. But what were the results from those executive sessions? Did several executive sessions on golf. There was a huge contract. We saved $2 million on the golf. We hired our wonderful police chief, Chief Riley. We preserved Vistoso from being developed. We hired Judge Hazel. We annexed Westward Look, gaining $800,000 of tax revenue for Oro Valley residents. So I want you to look at transparency. We have to be transparent. We are transparent, but when you do executive sessions, it's for contracts, it's with legal advice. It's not talking behind closed doors against the citizens. It's behind closed doors so the people you're doing contract negotiations with don't hear your positions and we can talk openly in public. Thank you very much. And thank you, Dave and everyone for putting this together.
Thank you, Josh. Joe Rusek, your closing statement.
Yeah, I too prepared something, but I'm throwing it away. I'm just going to talk from my heart. I believe that what we need more than anything right now in Oro Valley is strong economic development. And I believe that I'm the best person to help our community in the area of economic development. Most of you don't know my background, but just know that I do what I say. And I'm going to work very closely with all the professionals in economic development in Southern Arizona to make sure that we establish every possible record you can in that area of economic development. And I will do that. Dave, thank you for hosting this. I think you're inarguably the best chamber president in all of Southern Arizona. So I appreciate this opportunity. Please vote for me on August the 2nd. And again, I will do what I say.
Thank you, Joe. There's only a couple of chamber presidents out there, so it's not a big field. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I want us all to give a round of applause to these people who put themselves up for all of us. Thank you so much. We're a little bit behind schedule. We're going to take a 5-minute break and bring the mayoral candidates up here. Ladies and gentlemen on the stage, please use the 2 railings or go around on the back. Don't go down the front here. Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll find a seat, we're going to get to our mayoral conversation, please. Appreciate your patience. Welcome back. I'm pleased to welcome to the stage two longtime Oro Valley residents, men who have raised their families in the community and want to serve it further. I consider them to be my friends. My plan is that they'll continue to be my friends tomorrow morning. Please welcome to the stage Mayor Joe Winfield and retired OVPD Chief Danny Sharp, ladies and gentlemen. I was thinking I was going to sit, but I'm not sure if I can. I want to thank all the people that submitted questions to us and topics ahead of this evening. I'm trying to incorporate as many of those inquiries as I can. Because we have two candidates for mayor rather than 6 for council, each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer a question. I'll then return to the first respondent for a 30-second final word, and then we'll switch who gets the first answer. Some topics merit a series of questions, and we won't have the 30-second final word. I'll make clear to our guests, as well as all of you, when those subjects arise. In those instances, each of the candidates will give one 90-second question, and we'll answer and we'll alternate those responses. Earlier, we flipped a coin to determine the order of opening and closing remarks. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening remark and then 1 minute for closing remarks. And true to form, I can't find that piece of paper. There it is right there. That piece of paper which showed me how the order was. Mayor Winfield, you're going to have the first 2-minute opening remark followed by Chief Sharp.
Good evening. I'm Mayor Joe Winfield. Thank you, Oro Valley Chamber of Commerce, for hosting this event and to everyone joining us tonight. Mary Ann and I have lived in Oro Valley for 26 years. This is where we raised our family, our 7 children. We love Oro Valley. Is Oro Valley safe? Oro Valley is ranked the safest town in Arizona based on FBI statistics and crime scores. Chief Kara Riley was twice voted Best Community Leader in Northwest Pima County. Detective Knapp, president of the Oro Valley Police Officers Association, speaking to council said, quote, "Your commitment and support have been pivotal in our membership being able to fulfill the mission of the Oro Valley Police Department, close quote. Oro Valley compensates their officers better than all other jurisdictions in southern Arizona. Oro Valley has more officers per capita than Marana, Pima County, Tucson, and Sarita. Oro Valley spends more of its budget on public safety per capita than Marana, Pima County, and Sarita. This Friday, Oro Valley will add 3 new officers to our police force. I've talked to thousands of residents and visitors during my tenure as mayor, and one of the common themes in those conversations is the recognition that Oro Valley is a safe community. This past Sunday, I received an email from a resident that lost their home to a fire. They wrote, quote, "It is devastating to see your home and possessions going up in flames, but Officer Ward virtually never left my side and did everything to calm and assure me. Their handling of the matter reassured me that Oro Valley is the place I will spend the remainder of my life." Is Oro Valley safe? The answer for me is a resounding yes. To say otherwise is a disservice to Chief Riley, the command staff, and the support staff, and the 103 men and women who put their lives on the line every day to keep Oro Valley the safest community in Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Chief Sharp, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking the Oro Valley Church of the Nazarene for providing the venue for this forum. For more than 2 decades, I served as a chief, and they were always open and accommodating for us to have functions, celebrations, and trainings here. I also like to thank Dave Perry and the Oro Valley Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event. I'm Danny Sharp. I'm a retired police chief and mayoral candidate. I spent over 20 years running the Oro Valley Police Department. During that time, I also served 18 months as the interim town manager. I brought a culture of community policing to the town of Oro Valley that has served our residents and our businesses very well and contributed greatly to our quality of life. I was able to achieve success by working collaboratively with community members and our other government partners, such as Golden Ranch Fire, Amphi School District, Pima County, the state of Arizona, and our federal government. But of equal importance, I instilled that culture and collaborative spirit within the ranks of the department and with its future leaders. I have a proven record of success. I'm running for mayor because I'm seeing the quality of life in the town that I love deteriorate. We are not as safe as we were. We are not maintaining the assets that we have, and we're over $50 million in debt. Decisions are being made with minimal discussion and limited citizen input. For the residents who are paying attention, there is diminished trust in our local government. Losing public trust should be a huge concern to everyone. It certainly is for me. When I'm elected mayor, I will work to restore the public trust by getting the police department the staffing needed to address the safety issues in our community and those threats that are looming from outside. I will stop the reckless spending that is the current norm and bring fiscal responsibility back in order to ensure that the people's money is spent responsibly. I will bring transparency back to our local government. Decisions will be made in public after taking input from the community and then giving that input proper consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, we're going to start with you. We solicited questions for this event, and we're going to begin with some of the earlier themes from the previous session. You're running in tandem with the 3 council incumbents. One writer said, and I quote, "It looks like a vote for one of you is a vote for all of you. Wouldn't it be best to have 7 independent voices and thinkers representing us on the town council? Why would a voter want to vote for a PAC that creates a majority that would groupthink their way to local governments?" Joe, how do you respond to that question?
Melanie, Joyce, Josh, and I think are a wonderful example of how the different parties can work together for the betterment of a community. Although this is a nonpartisan race, we represent independent, Republican, and the Democrat parties. In many ways, we've come together for practical reasons. As was mentioned earlier, we made a decision to not take donations from realty developers and other special interest groups, to remain independent and have autonomy. Elections cost money. Our campaign is approximately $50,000. You're looking at the largest contributor to my campaign. By working together, we're able to spread the costs that are associated with a campaign. And we are independent thinkers, and that's illustrated in a variety of ways. The naming of the Vistoso Trails Nature Preserve. Joyce voted for a different name. When it came to a property a few years ago, there was differing votes in regards to the general plan amendment for that property. So I believe that in many ways we are a wonderful example of how different parties can work together for the betterment of the community.
Before I proceed, thank you, Joe. Danny, is a vote for one on the ticket a vote for all, either for the mayor and the incumbent council members or for you and the three challengers?
Well, we're not running as a slate, so vote for me or any of the challengers, that's a decision that's going to be made. I find it interesting about the comment about the largest contributor to the campaign is Mayor Winfield, and they're all pulling their resources. And then I go flashback to the comment that Josh made about, yeah, when your brother gives you $1,000 to go to school, then you're going to feel obligated to go babysit. So if we're all working together like that, then maybe there is an obligation or a feeling that you are voting as a block and doing things, and that concerns me. I heard a lot of answers earlier about where it was we did this and we did that, but I heard it's independent thought, and I didn't hear a lot of I. So it does concern me that somebody would look at that and say, okay, a vote for one is a vote for all, because that certainly seems to be the case, and that seems to be what people have been expressing concerns to me as I've been out on the campaign trail and meeting with residents.
Thank you. Joe, do you have a response to that? 30 seconds?
You know, with that 30 seconds, I remember, Dave, you called me about a particular project that was coming up to a vote. And you encouraged me actually to reach out to some of my fellow council members to influence their vote on that particular project. And I believe that you'll remember, Dave, that I told you that I would not do that I respected the independence of my fellow council members and wanted them to have their autonomy, even though I didn't necessarily agree. I've been criticized for that position, but it was the right position.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
I think we're supposed to not applaud.
If you can. I mean, I'm not trying to be a control freak here, obviously. Danny, we'll go to you now. They're running a self-funded campaign with some contributions from citizens. Are you willing to accept endorsements and campaign donations from developers and interest groups? If so, what should the voter infer from that position? That's a 90-second answer, please.
You know, it concerns me when you say interest groups, because I don't know exactly what you mean by interest groups. But when we talk about developers or business people, home builders, we have development people, we have business people, and we have home builders that reside in Oro Valley. Are they lesser residents because of the job that they've chosen to take? Are they lesser residents and they don't deserve to have a representation because of that? The gentleman that built my house, retired police officer, lives in Oro Valley. He's a home builder. Does he and his wife not get to have that type of representation because of the job that he chooses to feed his family? You know, it concerns me when we start putting labels on people and trying to figure out a way to drive a wedge between our citizens. We need to be inclusive. We need to bring people together, and we need to stop the division that we're seeing in this community, where we're driving neighborhood against neighborhood, group against group. We need to figure out ways for us to get together, to get to yes, and to make sure that we move Oro Valley forward in a positive direction, including everyone.
Thank you. Joe? Danny's willing to accept endorsements and campaign donations from developers. When I say interest groups, I think of associations, something like a home builders or a real estate organization. What should the voter infer from Danny's position that he's willing to accept endorsements and donations?
You know, the voters can, I leave it to the voters to infer what they choose with that position. All I can do is say that the position that I've taken is to not seek the endorsements from these groups. I've chosen and have found that has been an important decision. It provides me with greater independence and freedom. You shouldn't infer that means that an unwillingness to work with the Southern Arizona Home Builders Association or to work with the Association of Realtors. I meet with the Southwestern Arizona Business Builders Association on a regular basis, and also with Jeff Hebb with the Association of Realtors. Of course, I have friends that are in the construction business, in the realty business, but I simply choose to be free of those endorsements at a campaign level to ensure my independence and freedom. And I think it does send an important message to the residents of my community that I want to the best of my ability, to represent you, the voters of the town of Oro Valley. And I do my best to do that by reaching out to you, by going door to door, by having conversations with you, and thank you.
Thank you. Danny, do you have a 30-second response to that?
I just want to make it clear that as far as you commenting about freedom and feeling free to do that and independent, I spent 20 years as a police chief. I spent 41 years as a police officer dealing with people in all walks of life. And if somebody would think that because of somebody donated or somebody did something that would somehow compromise the integrity that I've built over the 41 years in my career and all, I think that's a real problem, and that concerns me. And I think people know me well enough that I wouldn't be compromised, and I could still feel free to do what I need to do.
Thank you. Joe, we're going to turn our attention to growth. A guest columnist in The Explorer suggested Oro Valley should pursue diversification of the town's tax base through economic development activities. He wrote that this option is contradictory to the slow or no growth policy. That author was Dick Eggerding. He was president of the Chamber Board, and he wrote it in fall of 1996. Do Dick's words still hold true today, 26 years later, that economic development activities, it's not optional in his view, that would be contradictory to a slow or no growth policy? That was a bad question, but I'll see what you can do.
Well, Dave, that's not the first bad question you've given me, so I'll give it as I mentioned, our families lived in the town of Oro Valley for 26 years. The one constant has been change. I certainly support responsible growth. The foundation of responsible growth is our general plan. I served on the 2006 General Plan Steering Committee, the 2016, there were 3 different committees, the Community Committee, I served with Dave on that committee. So the foundation of responsible growth is aligning decisions with our general plan. Certainly having diversity, and we had a 12% business growth last year, 30 different businesses opened shop in Oro Valley. They represented the various industries in terms of retail, hospitality, and services, and so forth. So I support responsible growth, and that is best accomplished by following the processes that are in place, of having neighborhood meetings, of having those projects come to the planning and zoning, and then eventually to the town council. All of that is in a public forum where the residents and applicants have the opportunity to voice their favor or opposition to those proposals.
Thank you, Danny. I'll try to make that a more legible, comprehensible question. Diversification of the town's tax base through economic development activities, that option being contradictory to a slower no-growth policy. What do you think about that?
Well, he was right on, and you got to remember the time in 1996. Oro Valley has been and continues to be rather dependent on construction sales tax in order to fund our services. There was a decision made, and what we needed to do is diversify our revenue and be able to have more retail in and transfer, get off the need to be using the construction sales tax and get our retail in. And so that exactly is what Dick was talking about with that. And that's what we have to do, and we have to continue to do that. We have to be able to bring retail in. We talk about opening 30 new businesses. How many closed? You know, we lost Best Buy. The Salted Pig left, and then a restaurant came in, and hopefully they'll do well. But you know that's a net gain, and you got a zero loss or near zero net. The Ace at Lambert and La Cañada is closing. It's one of those things where we're losing businesses, we're losing retail opportunities, and we need to do something to make sure that we change that trend. And we're working with our businesses, and we're getting we're diversifying, but we also are going to have the rooftops.
Joe, 30 seconds to respond.
You know, we did have exceptional business growth last year, and we're doing very well this year. We've had 17 storefronts open in Oro Valley, 40 home businesses, and there's a new term that it's a dozen or more that have opened. They office in places like the post office, so they have offices, but they share it with other individuals. So we're continuing to see excellent business growth in the town of Oro Valley, and we support that.
Thank you. Danny, one of the ways to growth, of course, is annexation. We've talked about the westward look. I'll ask the same question I asked earlier. What's the argument you would make in developed areas, and it could be Ina and Oracle, apparently all the way south to River, for annexation into this community?
It'd be the same argument that I have been making for 20 years. We've annexed a number of areas by going forward and showing that the safety of this community and what the police department is able to do and provide. When we annexed McGee and Oracle, before Oracle Crossings went in, that was done, and that was driven by the safety of the community and actually the police department. When we annexed Tahona Chul, it was the safety of what the community offered, and it was the police department. It was a philosophy that I brought to Oro Valley with community policing, and that we are going to go out. You know, I started Adopt a Business. I did the things that made it so businesses wanted to come into Oro Valley. So I understand how that works because I did it. And I would propose that we would do the exact same thing and be able to do that. But I will give the caveat on this is we need to make sure that the businesses that we currently have are being treated well, because the businesses that we want to bring in are going to talk to the other business owners. They're going to talk to the shopping center owners. So we need to make sure that we're treating them well if we're going to ask other people to come in.
Joe, what's the argument you would make in developed areas for annexation into the community?
Well, first of all, Mayor Romero might have something to say if we were to try to annex down to River, because we're into the city of Tucson. But I think the argument is what we bring to businesses, and that's providing exceptional government services in the four core areas or pillars of local government: public safety, public works, parks and recreation, land use. What we bring to those areas, unannexed areas of unincorporated Pima County, is we bring the safest community in Arizona. We bring the best roads in southern Arizona. We bring the best parks and recreation opportunities for their families, for their customers, for their patrons. We bring standards, design standards, that bring and attract people to our community. People know when they're driving down Oracle, Before they see a sign of Oro Valley, they know when they've arrived in our town because of the protection of the Oracle Scenic Corridor, because of the design standards for our built environment, because of the roads, quite frankly, and because of public safety and that wonderful program of Adopt a Business and others. When you call a cop in Oro Valley, you get a cop.
Thank you. I'm gonna make this one, I'm gonna do 90 seconds and 90 seconds without that 30-second response. Hope that's okay with everybody here. Let's talk, Joe, about annexing as we approach build-out in this community. During the last 4 years, government had conversations with state land about the Tangerine 880. The public process began, there were public meetings. That process came to a halt. I don't know anything about what happened. Should talks be resumed?
Absolutely. You know, in our first 2 years of our of my serving as mayor, having an annexation strategy was a priority for me. I spoke about needing an annexation blueprint. That ultimately led to a comprehensive annexation strategy. There's 4 priorities in that annexation strategy plan. And then the first priority was the westward look, the Oracle corridor up to Orange Grove, and then the 85 acres that are west of us. We were working with the Arizona State Land Department in neighborhood meetings. It was a robust public involvement process. At some point in the process, there was some inventory work that was being done on the 880 acres, saguaros, and other native plants. The State Land Department announced that they were having staffing challenges, shortages, and they ended that process. It was not ended by the town of Oro Valley, and we have reached out to the State Land Department, but up to this point, they have not returned to the table. But we want to annex the 885 acres. Marana, we have the water, Marana doesn't.
Thank you. Danny, should we reinstitute engagement with state land regarding the Tangerine? I call it the 880, it must be the 885.
I call it the 880, and that's what it was referred to by the State Land Commission. I know that because I was the interim town manager, and I negotiated this with State Land. They were ready to go. They wanted to do that. We actually had to do a general plan amendment to change our planning area because they wanted us to go north of Tangerine Road. The conversations were very productive. In fact, it was state land that, you know, we talk about westward look. That's something that was on the books for a long time. We talk about state land and going north up in the Real X Ranch area, or what's called Arroyo Grande. State land has wanted to talk to Oro Valley about things, but never got a good response. So I met with them, and we got a good response, and they said, okay, we'd like for you to look at going west. We'd like for you to annex that 880 acres. We're going to work with that. And we're going to use the 880-acre annexation as a template to go north. There's state land, 33 square miles of state land that goes up to Oracle Junction that the state was willing to talk to us about. And that was all in process. So when I was interim town manager, I passed that off to the current town manager, and then everything stopped and failed. I don't know how that could have occurred unless something that the town had done that had them reassigned.
Would you like 30 seconds to respond to that, Joe?
You know, the process with the State Land Department was a robust public involvement process. We had planning staff that was doing inventory work of documenting all of the saguaros. The property is rich with saguaros. We have an environmentally sensitive land ordinance. The State Land Department simply wrote us and said that they were having staffing issues and ended the process.
Thank you. Let's do one more on state land. Danny, if we annex undeveloped state land, and as you point out, there are considerable acreages nearby, what's your vision for how that land would be developed?
Well, my vision for how it'd be developed, it would be, we'd take an inventory of what it is we need. How can we diversify that revenue? How can we bring in high-paying jobs, tech park, doing things and start negotiating. If we have the land to do that, we can start looking at that. We've got a great resource in the University of Arizona in the development of things that can happen. We have the incubator accelerator. So what we would do is look at what makes sense for whatever the state land is and work with them. Remember, there's a constitutional mandate that state land be sold for the highest and best use to fund education. That's something that we need to make sure that we're cognizant of, is the fact that the State Land Commission has a mandate constitutionally. So we would look to them to figure out what's going to make the most sense, that's going to get the most money for the state, which is mandated for the highest and best use, and what's going to make the most sense for Oro Valley as far as diversifying our revenue, providing places to live, having some different things with housing so we can bring in different people and we have more people that work here in Oro Valley, live here in Oro Valley.
Thank you. Joe, if we annex undeveloped state land, what's your vision for how it would be developed?
Well, my vision is that it would align with our general plan. Certainly, as our general plan lays out, we have a variety of land uses, tech park, retail, housing. My vision for that acreage would be similar. This would be in the best interest of the town of Oro Valley, is a mixed land use for that property that included tech, retail, and housing. I see J.J. Johnston in the audience. He was a strong advocate for tech park property. We have a limited number of that type of land use in the town of Oro Valley, and we were looking to at least acquire about 100 acres of that 885 as tech park. That wasn't necessarily the interest of the state land department, but that was what was in the best interest of our community, a mixed use land use, not just straight housing, but retail, tech park, and housing, and also listening to the neighbors that surrounded that property, many of them who had lived there for 20, 30 years. Even though they're not residents of Oro Valley, I believe that they had a voice in what happened with that property.
Thank you. We're going to turn our attention to the marketplace. I know a big subject for our community. Joe, I believe you get first crack at this one, and I won't reiterate the history as repeated earlier. Town West came with a big proposal years ago now. They made their presentation. P&Z voted 6-1. Joe Ursak was right, it wasn't 7-0. After that recommendation, they came to council, and you turned that back to them and said, come in with lower heights, lower density at the marketplace. Why?
Dave, one of the things that you do well is connect people. You reached out to me and made arrangements for me to meet with Jim Horvath and Toby, his son, with Town West. They had recently purchased the Sprouts retail area, retail marketplace. And we had a discussion about the marketplace and the fact that Vestar was in the process of possibly beginning to break up that project and sell it out piecemeal. I'm really grateful that Town West and their investors purchased the marketplace. As Josh mentioned, when they first presented some of their proposals, it included 2- and 3-story apartments. As time evolved, that changed from 2- and 3-story to 5- and 6-story apartments. My belief is what was being proposed was just simply out of character with our community. The mass and scale was actually larger than the Oro Valley Hospital. It was incredibly close to the Tangerine Scenic Corridor. It didn't fit with our community. We wanted to continue working with them. That's why we continued the project and didn't stop it at that point. They came back May 18th with 2 options that we support.
Danny, Town West comes with its proposal. Council sends it back asking for less height and density. What are your thoughts about that decision?
Well, my understanding is council sent it back and says come in with, under the current zoning and the codes and under the height and setback that's already there. So, so again, there's 2.5 years of effort that's being put forth. Remember, when people buy something and then they're trying to do something, it's costing them money. And so we need to make sure that we're sensitive to the fact that we need to work with them. So if there's not, if they bring in something that's massive and that doesn't fit with the character of the town, then we figure out how do we get to yes? What's the compromise? What has to be done? But if you just tell them, no, just come back under the current setbacks and the current heights, we should have told them that 2.5 years ago, and that we're not gonna have any conversations with that, or we talk about the fact that we're willing to work with them. Because the concern is the message that we're sending to future people that want to develop. We talk about economic development, we talk about bringing businesses in, and then we don't accept the fact that they are investing and that we're willing to work with them. That becomes a problem.
Joe, Town West has come back with 2 hotels, not 3, with a preference for 49-foot buildings south of Tangerine and in the Central Entertainment District at the Marketplace. A majority of council said it would more likely support a hotel near Oracle, but not Tangerine. Why?
Well, let me say that I believe Town West was told early in the process. They simply didn't listen. I attended a number of neighborhood meetings. I listened to the concerns of residents, and quite frankly, I was disappointed that they came to us with basically 2 options. And so I have no regrets in working with Town West and having them make changes. In regards to the hotel next to Tangerine, what they had presented had actually not been presented to staff, so staff didn't have an opportunity to evaluate what they were proposing. There was some concern that the proposed hotel didn't meet the setback limits. Part of the purpose of that is to preserve the views of the Catalina Mountains from the Tangerine Scenic Corridor. And that was our primary interest, is protecting those views. And that's still important to me. The Catalina Mountains, I've talked to countless people, many who came to Oro Valley because those mountains captured their hearts. And so for me, it's a priority to protect the views of the Catalina Mountains. And I certainly, the Town West, when they presented the 2 options, they said both were viable. They wouldn't have presented them if they were not. We simply voiced our preference for option B with a hotel next to Oracle because it could easily meet the setback requirements.
Danny, how do you respond to that? They came back, 49 feet was their request. They wanted to build a hotel south of Tangerine, and council said they would not support that. The majority of council said they would not support that. They would be more likely to support it along Oracle.
Well, and again, where's the compromise and where's the ability to work together? And if it's like, well, we're not going to support this, there's no, again, compromise. I saw Joe shaking his head over there when you were saying that, so apparently his interpretation is different than yours. But that certainly was my understanding as well. And again, I think we need to make sure that we're working with everyone to make sure we get what is going to be best for the community and for ultimately for what the community wants. I heard a lot of people talk at the meeting in favor of this. I've talked to a lot of residents that are in favor of these things happening as well. So again, if we're going to listen and we're going to be transparent, then I think we need to listen to all the residents and not just the people that are concerned about a view shed that maybe even isn't something that's a problem.
Joe, does the March 14th, 2006 vote creating a lifestyle, entertainment, and power retail center at Oracle and Tangerine, is that something that you think about? Does it influence the decisions that you make?
Dave, I have to say that that was not preeminent in my mind until you brought it up in this debate. So my honest answer is that was not a consideration.
Fair enough. Danny, does that vote make a difference in how you would deliberate?
Yes, that vote does make a difference. I remember I voted in that election, and that's what the citizens of the town wanted, the residents of the town wanted, and I think that that's something that we should be mindful of. When there's a vote, when the residents of the town say no to a bond for Naranja Park, we don't figure out a way to go out and bond it another way. I think we listened to the voters in Oro Valley, and it was 15, 16 years ago that vote took place. However, I think that the will of the people, it happened, and that was there, and I think it should be considered. I think sometimes we don't follow history. We don't follow what's happened in the past. Sometimes we try to rewrite history, and that doesn't work well for us. And I think the voters do remember the vote of 2006. I sure do.
Joe, is there an acceptable height to you for buildings at the marketplace, be they hotels or apartments?
Well, I mean, we have zoning and codes for a reason. The height limits for the marketplace are 39 feet. The setback limits are what was described by Vice Mayor Barrett. The Town West, the two hotels, they're asking for a variance of that height limit to 49 feet. I'm certainly open to that, especially the hotel that's located in the center of the property, near the lowest elevation point of the marketplace. I'm certainly open to that at Oracle because it easily meets the setback limit, so it's not going to be a view concern. I'm open to it at Tangerine as long as the setback limits can be met, because the setback limits are what ensure that views are protected.
Thank you. Danny, is there an acceptable height to you for hotels, apartments, any kind of buildings at the marketplace?
Yes, there is, and I think that what Town West has said is that 49 feet will be able to bring in a Tier 1 hotel. Remember, these hotels that were proposed, if you penciled out, it was about $800,000 a year to the town. That's pretty significant, and being able to have these Tier 1 hotels in a lower area for 10 feet more is something that needs to be discussed. Again, that vote, you bring up the vote in 2006, the Tangerine Scenic Corridor and the Oracle Road Scenic Corridor District both existed in 2006. The voters said that that's what they wanted, something like this. So those are the things, again, we have to balance what the community is telling us with what's there. We can't just say, well, we have a code, so we're just going to have that code be there, and we're not going to take into account what the reality is, what the conditions are currently. As it was mentioned before and earlier, is we have a huge effect now with online retail and people buying things that changes the entire nature of shopping.
Thank you. Let's talk about money. Government, of course, runs on tax dollars. Local sales tax levies generate about half the general fund revenue that we receive every year. Danny, I believe this is for you first. What actions would you take to increase sales tax revenue to town government?
Well, we have to bring in more retail, but we're not going to bring in more retail. In fact, we're losing retail because we don't have the rooftops. I think we're going to have more. We have building going on, so we have things that are happening. But the problem is that at some point, this building's going to stop. This council hasn't approved one new development in 3.5 years. And as we talked about, we're running out of buildable land in the town, and we're not having any discussions about annexing any state land. So the difficulty is that we're going to have to figure out ways to increase our retail and give them opportunities to be successful. The marketplace is a good example about being able to bring in more retail, to bring in more bed tax, to bring in people to spend money, through the hotels and having people come and bring in the restaurants. That's going to be the way to do it.
Joe, what actions have you taken? What actions would you take to increase sales tax revenue to town government?
It's really simple. It's focusing on the 4 pillars, on the core functions of government: public safety, public works, parks and recreation, land use. That's really what drives people wanting to come to Oro Valley, for businesses wanting to open. Roche Tissue Diagnostics, they're in Oro Valley for those reasons: the Catalina Mountains, the protection of views. Leonardo Electronics, the owner of that, they're moving to Oro Valley because of the trails, the multi-use paths, the quality of life. The businesses that want to come to Oro Valley, the restaurants that are opening. Josh Bishop, who manages the Keg, he and his brother who've opened up the barbecue where Salted Pig was, they want to be in Oro Valley for those reasons. Public safety, we're the safest community in Arizona. We have the best roads in southern Arizona. We're investing in our parks and recreation. Residents all the time tell me how appreciative they are of the Vistoso purchase, of the bike paths, of the multi-use paths, of the trails, of the recreational opportunities, of the design standards. This is really what drives business in Oro Valley, is that if we focus on our core functions and we're true to those, retail will come.
Danny, are there tax increases in Oro Valley's future over the next 4 years? And should Oro Valley examine a property tax option?
Well, the tax increases that we're seeing in the next 4 years is inflation-driven. As everything we buy is more expensive, and if we have a sales tax on it, that means we're paying more money. So yes, there are more taxes in the future for Oro Valley residents that are here. As far as a property tax, absolutely not. I absolutely oppose a property tax. One of the reasons I'm running is because I think I can make a difference in stopping some of this out-of-control spending and deal with the issues that are there, and we won't need a property tax. But if we keep spending money the way we're spending money and indebting ourselves, there's going to be a problem, and that needs to stop.
Joe, are there tax increases in Oro Valley's future over the next 4 years? And should Oro Valley examine a property tax option?
No.
Thank you. Let's turn our attention to park bonds and golf. Joe, I believe this one's you. Council issued $25 million in bonds to build out Naranda Park, other recreation facilities, including the replacement of irrigation systems at the community center golf courses. A writer, someone submitted this. Twice the voters of this community rejected bond issues that incorporated Naranja Park improvements into admittedly larger proposals. How do you justify spending on Naranja now when the voters spoke twice against it?
Well, both of those initiatives were essentially a property tax. This bond is paid with existing resources. There's no increase in taxes. There's no property tax associated with this $25 million parks bond. Let's keep in mind that debt is a part of a financial portfolio. In June 30th, 2017, the town of Oro Valley had $50 million of debt on the books. And at that particular time, a $23 million police pension debt, so $73 million of debt on the books. Today, we have approximately, with these bonds, $73 million of debt. The difference is our police pension fund is fully funded. We actually made $2 million instead of having it increase by a significant amount. We will save taxpayers $30 million by bonding the police pension fund. We will save the taxpayers of Oro Valley by bonding these improvements to parks, estimated, stifled, the same group, at approximately $10 million. That's a $40 million savings, but at the same time, we're replacing the golf irrigation. We're improving the tennis courts with post-tension concrete. We're adding pickleball courts. We're going to be building out Naranja Park, and we're doing this all without a tax or property tax. tax increase.
Thank you, Joe. Danny, the voters had said twice they rejected bond issues that incorporated Naranja improvements. What do you think about the decision to spend on Naranja now when the voters spoke twice against it?
Well, I'm a little incredulous about the whole thing because what we're doing is we're indebting the people of Oro Valley. This is not this council's money. This is the people's money. And so and the concern that I have was, the lack of transparency. This happened very quickly. I was talking to a gentleman 2 weeks ago, and he says, I didn't know anything about a $25 million bond. When did that happen? And this is somebody that pays attention. So it happened quickly. Now, the idea that, we have so much money in the community center fund that we can go out and borrow money for something else, there was never a discussion with the community, well, if we're making more money than we need for the community center, maybe we could give some of it back to the residents. I think everybody would like to have a little bit of a holiday on sales tax from the town of Oro Valley right now while inflation is what it is. So it's something that, again, when the voters say, this isn't something we want to do, we don't want a bond, and when we have council people 4 years ago that were running saying, we won't bond anything unless the vast majority of the community wants it, and then they do it, that's a little disingenuous.
Would you like 30 seconds to respond to that, Joe?
Again, the previous attempts at funding Naranja Park improvements was essentially a property tax. This park's bond is being paid with existing resources. No new taxes, no property tax. It's an ultra-low loan rate at 2.3%. Will save the community $10 million. Building out Naranja Park is something that this community has wanted to do since it was purchased over 20 years ago.
Thank you. Danny, let's talk about the half cent. The half cent sales tax was put in place by council in 2014 to subsidize the golf courses and community center operations. Now, council has made the decision to dedicate those revenues toward these bonds. Do you agree with that decision? What would you have done differently?
I don't agree with that decision. The community center has needs. It's interesting, we're covering everything in the community center. We have not done anything to address the ADA issues with that community center. There's not one penny of that bond that's being spent on that building. We have people that are challenged, mobility challenged in this community, and we have a community center that they can't access. That's bad. I cannot believe that we would say, we have met the needs, we have what it is. You haven't met the needs. So no, I don't agree with that, because if we're not taking care of the building, if we're not taking care of our residents, then that's a bad decision. I think that we need to make sure that we take care of our residents first.
Joe, you've pointed out we're using the half cent sales tax for these bonds, and there's no increase in taxes. Danny's raising this question about the community center building itself. How do you respond?
Well, just to clarify, when we say these bonds, the pension bond is not being paid out of the community center fund. It's only the Parks and Recreation bond. The pension bond is being paid out of the general fund for just good fiscal management. When we came into office, the golf courses were losing a couple $1 million a year, or being subsidized for operations. When the half-cent sales tax was first imposed upon the community, it was really intended for capital investment and to supplement operations, but the subsidy was so great that all of that tax was going to just simply subsidize the operation of golf. $2.5 million, $2 million. Then it came down to about $1.75 million, I think, in 2019. This year, as it was mentioned, we're going to actually turn a little bit of a profit. It's provided an opportunity to provide greater equity for use of these funds, and as a result of that, we're going to be making these investments in the golf course that hasn't been done for 40 years. We're going to be making investments in our tennis courts, which I observed as a new mayor that we were spending $100,000 a year to fill cracks, only to have the cracks reopen a few months later. So we won't have that continuing maintenance requirement. We'll be adding pickleball courts. This was a good decision. This was the right decision for our community. It benefits all of our community, and I'm very pleased with that decision.
Joe, I'm going to ask about golf, and I know that it's a subject that has occupied your attention in your tenure. When you ran 4 years ago, the community's expenses to operate golf, as you point out, and even the very operation of public golf courses were front and center in the campaign. Fast forward 4 years, new management company, pandemic, the subsidy need is reduced. Have you changed your mind about golf in this community? What's your view of it now?
Well, Dave, what do you think my mind was? I mean, my interest was to reduce the subsidy to golf, and that's what we've done. We have changed management companies, Indigo Sports. They've done an incredible job. We've increased membership. We've increased outside play. HOAs have contributed $125,000. All of that has resulted in reducing that subsidy, and today we have a balance in the community center fund of almost $6 million. That was unimaginable 4 years ago. So it's a wonderful accomplishment. As part of our Parks and Recreation Management plan, there was a variety of public outreach that we did, or that the contractor did, including a statistically valid survey. And certainly something that revealed is how important golf is to our community. About 20% of the community supported golf. Now, we have a number of golf courses, the Oro Valley Country Club, our 45 holes, the Views, Stone Canyon. It only makes sense that we would have a large percentage of our community that supports golf. The challenge is supporting all of those golf holes. But nevertheless, by working together, by working collaboratively, we have reduced that subsidy so that we're in a position to invest in other parks and recreation amenities.
Not sure how to ask the question exactly, Danny, but what's your view about golf and the journey that we've gone on with golf, and where are we going with golf?
Well, I think the journey that we were on, and I think that the people that lived around the golf courses had a year of uncertainty because a decision wouldn't be made. In fact, had a decision been made, the 9-hole course would probably be a part of the resort right now, but because of dragging the feet, this council not doing anything for a year, then the pandemic hit, then it was no longer viable fiscally for the resort to take it over. So, and there was a lot of uncertainty with the people living around the golf course and not getting any answers. You know, that was here that there's 700 people showed up to voice their concerns because they weren't being listened to. So yeah, there had to be an education that happened to change so the council would start being responsive to the citizens. But you know, an interesting thing happened. We talk about, well, you know, we came up with a plan and then we did the things. You know, the things that doesn't get mentioned that's concerning to me is we had a pandemic. And golf benefited because of the pandemic. And I don't hear anybody say, the only person that's mentioned that is you, Mr. Perry. You know, oh, it's good management and we've hired somebody else. The pandemic had a huge impact on the golf and I think that it's disingenuous for the mayor and council to not at least acknowledge that.
Let's talk about the Push Ridge 9, which was closed, then reopened, community pressure. We've got a 3-year trial period. It's performing really well. Joe, do you think we should invest in facilities to include the possibility of reclaimed water to the Push Ridge 9?
Well, certainly, ideally, I would like to see reclaimed water available to all areas where we have turf that are currently using potable water. That would include CDO High School, Ironwood Ridge High School, and our James D. Cree Park, Riverfront Park. but the cost of that, and that's something that we have asked staff to evaluate. What are the opportunities for extending reclaimed water? To extend that to the push 9 is a significant lift. The cost estimates that I've heard and very early, and this was before this inflationary period, was in the $5 million range. And so a significant investment for 9 holes of golf. But our water department is evaluating the use of reclaimed water, exploring opportunities, and I think that the likelihood of bringing reclaimed water to the push 9 is not very practical. If the decision is to retain those 9 holes, and that would be a community decision, it would mean reducing the turf significantly, possibly using a hybrid, a Bermuda hybrid that didn't require overseeding. And so I think there's some options, but that's still to be determined.
Danny, should Oro Valley keep the Push Ridge 9 open? Should the town invest in facilities and infrastructure, including reclaimed water, to operate that golf course?
Well, as you said, Dave, that the Push Ridge 9 has really seen a resurgence. I think that the Friends of Push Ridge have worked very hard to increase annual play from about 3,000 rounds to almost 15,000 rounds. So it shows that it's viable. It can help with the resort. It can help with bringing in tourists and bed tax that's going to benefit the town. The key is the water. You know, when we talk about water and say, oh, $5 million, you know, again, we did a $25 million bond with the community center money. That 9 holes part of that community center fund. So if it was $5 million to maybe look at that, and then we could also get our 2 parks that are on potable water, off of potable water, then maybe that's a good investment for the future. You know, we talk about doing things for our residents. What about our future residents? What about our kids? You know, water is a precious commodity here, and we need to start looking at it as if it's something that we need to start preserving and doing things. So when you say a $5 million investment, well, maybe that's a good investment in the future of this community and the future of our children.
We're running out of time, and I've got 20 more questions, but I'm just going to ask one more before closing remarks. And let's see, I think I've lost my order. Is it help me out, ladies?
It's okay, Dave.
Thank you. I'll ask Joe this question first. Joe, how would Oro Valley be different 4 years from now if you are elected?
How will it be different? Well, it will be different. The Naranjo Park will be built out. The Vistoso Trails Nature Preserve will have a plan, and we'll see incredible activity at that new amenity for our town. The marketplace will be a vibrant area with mixed use, with housing, with an entertainment district, with hotels, with restaurants and retail centers. We will ideally have annexed the 880 acres to the west, and also the Oracle Corridor around the Ina area. We'll see an increase in our population, and we'll see additional multi-use paths and trails. We'll see investments in our other parks and recreation. We'll have was that a timeout card?
Not quite, no.
Okay. Our police, our public safety will continue to be the safest community in Arizona. The future looks bright for Oro Valley, and I want to be a part of that future.
Thank you. Danny, if you were elected mayor, how would Oro Valley be different 4 years from now?
Well, I think that the first thing, and you know, we talk about Oro Valley being the safest community in the state. Those are based on figures from 2020. I'm concerned about the fact that we don't have enough police officers to do the job. I'm concerned about the vision that this mayor and council has given to the police department, so we can be understaffed to the point where we have to remove high school resource officers out of our high schools. It concerns me that I drive up and down Oracle Road and Tangerine Road, La Cholla, and I don't see any police cars. I don't see traffic stops. I see speeders. I see red light runners. I see tailgating in my rearview mirror because I try to drive the speed limit, and the town is not as safe as it was. You know, it's interesting. The safest town in Arizona that you've mentioned several times, Mayor, is you know, when that got rolled out on social media for the town, Oro Valley is the safest community in Arizona. Do you know what the police department was doing? They were investigating another fatal crash on Tangerine Road. That's not okay, that's not acceptable, and that's not safe. People can't go to Riverfront Park and go for a walk without their catalytic converter being stolen, somebody breaking out the window in their car and stealing their purse. That's not a safe community. So yeah, we'll see safety in this community in 4 years if I'm elected mayor, because I'm going to attend to that. You're also going to see more transparency. We're going to engage our public, and we're going to make sure that the public understands that we're going to be listening to them and we're going to work with them.
Thank you, Danny. I think we're going to conclude. And if I got my notes straight, I believe Danny has the first 1-minute closing remark.
No,
I blew that, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
You have the first closing remark.
That's
I'm
okay,
sorry.
Dave. We still love you.
Well, you're very kind.
You have now listened to me and my opponent debate the questions presented. I'd like to clarify your choice between us. We are the safest town in Arizona, and Chief Riley is making us better. My opponent implies Oro Valley is less safe. We will complete this fiscal year with $26 million excess in our general fund after paying down $10 million of police pension debt. My opponent implies fiscal irresponsibility. We are expanding Naranja Park without an increase in taxes. My opponent opposes Naranja Park expansion. We supported and assisted residents' purchases of the former Vistoso Golf Course, which will be the town nature preserve in July. My opponent's response is, it is done. What will it cost to maintain? We refuse to accept the Town West Oro Valley Marketplace plan for 6- and 5-story apartments. My opponent supports the 6- and 5-story apartments. I'm asking for your continued trust and vote so I can keep working to make Oro Valley the best place to live, work, and play. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Okay.
I'm interested to where some of those facts came from there, Joe, because I don't remember saying that I supported this, 65-foot height or something. So I guess if you want to just make things up, you can do that. But I'm talking about facts, and I just want to talk about this election. We're going to have choices to make in the upcoming election. We can choose to be safe or not. We can choose prosperity or debt. We can choose to be excellent or adequate. We can be a model, or we can be just mundane. We can be inclusive, or we can be divided. You're going to have to decide. We've seen the behavior of this mayor and his team and how the community has been treated. That's why I decided to run for mayor. I would appreciate your vote on August 2nd, and let's make this place back to where we were and make it even better. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you all again. I get the last word tonight. Ballots drop next week. The election is Tuesday, August 2nd. Please, a round of applause for these two gentlemen for putting themselves forward. All I care about is that you vote. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon.